The email arrived on a Wednesday morning, forwarded from the city's Historic Preservation Board. Notice of demolition permit application, 847 Riverside Avenue. My building. My 1894 brick warehouse that I'd spent 10 years restoring. The one with exposed timber beams and original iron columns. The one that housed 6 artist studios, a coffee roastery, and a bookstore that smelled like old paper and possibility. Someone wanted to demolish it. I scrolled down to the authorization signatures. There, in my father's aggressive scrawl, Robert Chen, original family owner, authorizing demolition. My mother had signed too, Patricia Chen, co-owner, family authorization. They'd negotiated $180,000 with Meridian Development Group for the rights to tear down a building they didn't own. A building they hadn't set foot in since 2014, when I'd bought it from the estate sale of my grandfather's business partner. I called my attorney Michelle Park before I called my parents. They can't do this, I said, pulling up the property deed on my computer. I've owned it for 10 years. I have the title, the tax records, everything. Forward me the demolition application, Michelle said. Her voice had that particular calm that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. And the email chain if there is one. Don't contact your parents yet. Let's see what the developer knows first. The application was thorough. Meridian wanted to build a 7-story luxury apartment complex. All glass and steel, the kind of architectural anonymity that erased neighborhood character for investor returns. They'd done their research on zoning, setbacks, parking requirements. They just hadn't researched who actually owned the property. The hearing was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. Public comment period, standard procedure. I cleared my calendar and printed 10 years of documentation. The original purchase agreement, annual property tax payments, historic renovation permits, business licenses for my tenants, even my building insurance policy. I didn't tell my parents I was going. I didn't warn them. I'd spent 3 years watching them describe my life as nice, while discussing my sister's marketing job for 45 minutes at every family dinner. I'd listened to Dad call my warehouse renovation, that project, while Mom asked if I'd ever considered real estate as a career, apparently unaware that's exactly what I'd been doing. The ghost ledger had entries I'd never spoken aloud. The Thanksgiving when Dad introduced me as our son who does something with old buildings, to his golf buddy who developed strip malls. The Christmas when Mom gave my sister a $5,000 check for a new car and gave me a book about finding your passion. The countless times they'd driven past my building to visit my sister across town, never once stopping to see what I'd created. But this was different. This wasn't dismissal. This was fraud. Friday arrived with cold rain and gray skies. The Historic Preservation Board met in a municipal building that smelled like floor wax and old wood. The hearing room held maybe 40 people. City staff, board members, a few neighborhood advocates, and a cluster of men in expensive suits that could only be Meridian Development. My parents sat in the front row, Dad in his golf polo, Mom in a sweater that probably cost more than my monthly property tax. They looked pleased with themselves. Victorious. They hadn't seen me slip into the back row. The board chair, Dr. Elena Vasquez, called the meeting to order. She was 60-something, an architectural historian who'd published 3 books on industrial preservation. I'd met her twice during my renovation permits. She'd praised my restoration of the original brick facade, the way I'd maintained the building's character while updating systems. Application DIM 2024-847, Dr. Vasquez read. Demolition permit for 847 Riverside Avenue, submitted by Meridian Development Group. The property is listed on the local historic register as a contributing structure in the Riverside Industrial District. A man in a charcoal suit stood, presumably Meridian's lead. Thank you, Dr. Vasquez. James Morrison, representing Meridian Development. We've secured authorization from the original family owners, the Chen family who've owned the property since 1967. He gestured to my parents. Mom smiled. Dad nodded with the confidence of someone who thought institutional authority was on his side. Morrison continued. The building, while historic, has become economically obsolete. The family wishes to see the property developed to its highest and best use. We're proposing a mixed-use development that will bring 84 residential units and ground floor retail to a currently underutilized site. Currently underutilized? Dr. Vasquez looked up from her notes. My understanding is the building is fully occupied. 6 commercial tenants, all current on their leases. Morrison barely paused. The tenants operate under informal arrangements with the family. They'll be properly compensated during transition. I felt my phone buzz. Michelle, watching the live stream from her office. Wait for it. Dr. Vasquez turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, can you confirm your ownership of 847 Riverside? Dad stood chest out playing the patriarch. My father-in-law bought that building in 1967 for his importing business. It's been in our family for 57 years. We have every right to decide its future. And you're authorizing demolition? It's time, Mom added. The building has served its purpose. Our family deserves to benefit from the property's value. I see. Dr. Vasquez made a note. And you're aware the building is owner-occupied? That someone currently holds the deed. Our son uses it for some art space thing, Dad said, waving his hand dismissively. But we're the family. We make these decisions together. Your son. Dr. Vasquez pulled a document from her folder. Would that be Andrew Chen? I stood up in the back row. Every head turned. That would be me, I said. My mother went pale. My father's jaw tightened, that tell when he realized he'd miscalculated. Mr. Chen, Dr. Vasquez said, and I heard something in her voice that might have been carefully controlled anger. Would you like to address the board? I walked down the aisle carrying my folder of documentation. Morrison from Meridian was looking between me and my parents, beginning to understand. The board members leaned forward. I purchased 847 Riverside Avenue in November 2014, I said, my voice steady. From the estate of Harold Preston, my grandfather's former business partner. Purchase price was $340,000. I've owned and operated the property for 10 years, 2 months and 17 days. I placed the deed on the table. Recorded with the county. Clear title. Then the property tax records. Paid annually. Never late. Total of $47,300 over 10 years. Then the renovation permits. Historic preservation compliance. Approved by this board in 2015, 2017 and 2019. Dr. Vasquez signed 2 of them personally. Then the business licenses. 6 tenants. All properly licensed. All current on rent. Total annual rental income of $84,000. All reported for taxes. Dr. Vasquez examined each document. The room was completely silent except for paper rustling and the rain against windows. Mr. Morrison, she said finally. Did your client perform a title search before negotiating with the Chens? Morrison was scrolling frantically through his tablet. We were assured by the family. Did you perform a title search? The family provided documentation showing. That's not what I asked. Morrison went quiet. Behind him, another Meridian executive was making urgent phone calls. Dr. Vasquez turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, you authorized demolition of a property you don't own. You negotiated payment for rights you don't possess. Did you disclose to Meridian Development that your son held the actual deed? We thought it was understood, Mom said weakly. Family property. There is no family property, I said. There's my property. That I bought. That I restored. That I've paid taxes on for a decade while you told people I'd do something with old buildings. Dad found his voice. You bought it with family money. I bought it with a commercial loan from First National Bank. I can provide the original loan documents, the payment history, and the satisfaction of mortgage from 2021 when I paid it off. Every cent came from my income as a structural engineer and the building's rental revenue. I pulled out one more document. Here's the deed from Harold Preston's estate. Here's my signature. Here's the county recorder's stamp. November 15, 2014. Not a single Chen family member listed except me. Dr. Vasquez closed her folder with a sharp sound that made Morrison flinch. This board cannot approve demolition without clear ownership authorization. Mr. Morrison, your application is denied. Furthermore, I'm recommending the city attorney review this matter for potential fraud. Wait, Dad started. Mr. Chen, you signed a legal document authorizing demolition of property you don't own. You negotiated financial compensation for rights you don't possess. That's not a family misunderstanding. That's fraud. She looked at Morrison. I suggest Meridian consult their attorneys regarding recovery of any deposits or fees paid to the Chen family. Morrison was already gathering his papers, his face the color of old concrete. We paid $40,000 as a good faith deposit for the authorization. Then you should discuss reimbursement with the Chens, Dr. Vasquez said. This hearing is concluded. I walked out before my parents could speak to me. Let them sit with it. Let them process that their son, who does something with old buildings, had just destroyed their $180,000 payday in 17 minutes of documentation. Michelle called as I reached my car. That was beautiful. Clean, factual, devastating. They're going to call you. I know. What are you going to say? I thought about the ghost ledger. Years of being introduced as an afterthought. Of watching them praise my sister's corporate job while calling my work a project. Of every dismissal, every condescension, every time they'd driven past my building without stopping. I'm going to say that if they attempt any further legal action regarding my property, I'll pursue charges for fraud and forgery. And then I'm going to block their numbers. That's my client talking. The calls started that evening. 6 from Dad. 4 from Mom. 3 from my sister acting as intermediary. Text messages ranging from angry, "You embarrassed us in public," to manipulative, "Family works together," to desperate, "The developer wants their money back." I blocked them all. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Meridian's attorneys demanding return of the $40,000 deposit from Robert and Patricia Chen. Attached was their correspondence with my parents. Emails where Dad described himself as property owner, and Mom discussed family authorization to proceed. I forwarded it to Michelle with a note, "Not my problem." A month after that, I got a different letter from the city's Historic Preservation Society. They were giving my building their annual restoration award. Dr. Vasquez had nominated it. The ceremony was in April. I stood in my building that evening, walking through spaces I'd created. The coffee roastery hummed with its vintage equipment. The bookstore glowed with warm light. Artist studios held works in progress. Paintings, sculptures, installations that wouldn't exist without this space. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, then saw the preview. "This is your father. We need to talk about the Meridian lawsuit." I deleted it without reading further. I thought about what Dr. Vasquez had said during the hearing after my parents left. Your building is what historic preservation is for. Not nostalgia. Active use. Community benefit. You've done this correctly. The building was mine. The deed was mine. The 10 years of work, the restoration, the vision, all mine. And I was done subsidizing my parents' fantasy that family loyalty meant erasing institutional reality. The demolition permit was denied. The deposit was forfeit. The building stood. And I finally stopped waiting for their approval to equal my documentation.